All right, guys, it's time. It is time to do the biggest patch in wildrift history, the full breakdown, long video. This is everything that I think everyone's been asking for in wildrift for quite some time. Before we get into it, a couple of announcements. G2A continue to sponsor my channel, and I really appreciate that they do. I haven't been the best over the last 6 months at really doing enough shout outs for them, and I just want to say massive thanks to them because they've decided to continue with supporting me, which realistically is one of the main things that can kind of keep me going on the channel. So massive props to G2A. There is a link in the description below, and I thank them so much for continuing to support me. And also, sorry for not uploading any videos while I was on holiday. I had a few videos scheduled, and I set them to upload, and then my internet cut when I was driving to the airport, so clearly they didn't actually upload. So when I came back, I'd set my computer to automatically turn off. I found out they hadn't actually uploaded. So you got a dead channel while I was on holiday. I'm going to tell you the story of my holiday, probably partway through this video. So if you want to keep watching, you can find out how hilarious my holiday was. It wasn't the best, I will tell you that. But yeah, let's get on to the stuff that matters, which is the patch. So as with all the new big patches, we are getting some champions added, and I'm actually pretty excited for this one here, Echo. You guys might know Echo from League of Legends, but he is an AP assassin who can essentially rewind time with his ultimate and makes for some really cool plays that you can do with him. I'm very excited to see kind of how this shapes out. You know, there is some really fun things that you can do with Echo. I'm going to try and make a champion guide on him. I'll try and do that tomorrow. But there are some really insanely cool things that you can do with Echo that I think you guys will really love. And he's a really fun champion to play. Quite risky, a little bit all in. But he is a really good team fighting champion. I think he's going to be really good in wildrift. His ultimate is fantastic, especially because we're in a very, wildrift is a very team fight burst heavy type of game. And Echo's classically quite good at negating burst damage. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really cool champion. And I'll try and do a champion guide on him tomorrow. Elemental Rift. We are essentially getting some changes to Elemental Rift, which are going to be pretty cool. So Elemental Rift is essentially getting another change. What I think they're doing here is it's not necessarily that they don't like what they've done so far. I get the impression that this is just testing different ideas about how to make Elemental Rift work in wildrift, seeing which one plays the best, seeing which one in terms of data provides the best quality matches. And I think the only thing I think about the previous iteration of the elemental dragons, I actually quite liked the direction they were going with it, but it definitely felt like Dragon Soul was claimed very early into the game, and then once the Dragon Soul was claimed, that was kind of like a super game-ending moment. And I think ideally we want wildrift games to be as short-ish. We really don't want to let them run to 20 minutes plus. I think the ideal length for a wildrift game should be between 13 and 15 minutes, in my opinion. So I kind of got the idea that the elemental dragons previously were there to speed the game up and try and make it a bit more intense and make dragons feel like a much more impactful objective. So I actually quite liked the previous version, but obviously it definitely felt a little bit like the comeback mechanics when you lost soul were kind of doomed. This one is a bit different. They're essentially saying that the terrain is going to change after the first dragon. The individual elemental dragons will still give their elemental effects, so you'll still get the elemental effects that you see here. Instead of a dragon soul, after your team slays its second dragon, the elemental effects can stack, which basically means that you can get extra stacks. So you get 2 sets of infernal dragons, so it just increases your percentage increase on attack damage and ability power, etc. This is good, but still feels quite slow, I would say. It really depends on the types of dragons that are on offer, etc. It just feels a little slow. It might be a little too slow, and it might not be as powerful of a win condition as you'd need it to be to really have that kind of effect. An Elder Dragon spawning at 20 minutes with a 4-minute respawn timer just feels like that, to me, that's going to be a situation where games could go on too long. Especially because I think 20 minutes is already long. I would say that 20 minutes is already quite long for a Wildrift game. Having it at 20 minutes and a 4-minute respawn timer, if you're getting to second Elder Dragon, you're already in a game that just feels far too long for wildrift. I think the 13 to 15 minute mark where Baron is coming online is a good place for teams to be thinking about how they close the game out at that point. And I think for competitive, having games that go longer is cooler and makes for higher intensity watching. And I think further down the line, longer games may be more suitable. But right now, I feel like the shorter you can make the games, or like it's a balancing act, right? The shorter you can make the games while still retaining the feeling that you can actually influence them for the majority of that time is the important thing. I just feel like 20 minutes is going to be a long-ass Wild Rift game if that's going to be the major objective spawning at that point. But hey, look, that's just my opinion. I'm definitely going to see how it plays out. We've got some guild versus guild stuff. New missions, dialogue will only trigger 3 times a week. Great, because I used to get so much dialogue on the guild versus guild things. It was crazy. Okay, so I mean, there's loads of random highlighting on these notes, and I'm really sorry. This is the version of the notes that I was given, so the highlighting I just can't help. TLDR, they're making it so there is some lever mitigation and ranked and AFK loss mitigation, which I think are some of the biggest quality of life updates Wild Rift has ever done. If I were to name the 5 biggest things that people care about in terms of things that they wanted Riot to fix, number 1, matchmaking, which I've always maintained is a combination of factors. This is not purely down to the Riot matchmaking algorithm. I can make videos for days on matchmaking. AFK players, toxicity, loss mitigation, and, balance sometimes. This is like addressing some of the major concerns that the player base has got in one big patch. I think this is really awesome. Remake. When a player is AFK at the start of the game, you have the opportunity to vote to remake the match. If the vote is successful, the game will end with neither team receiving a win or a loss, and all consumables will be refunded. Oops, sorry, hiccup. It'll be like it never even happened. However, the player who was AFK will receive a loss. If you're pre-made that involves masters, if you're in a pre-made that involves players who are masters and above, the pre-made members will also be given losses to prevent abuse. That's basically to say, if you're in a pre-made with someone who is a master tier or above, so you could be in diamond, and someone one of them just goes AFK at the start of the game because they don't like the comp that they've got, or they see someone on the enemy team that they don't want to play against, it's just to prevent pre-made parties from ruining matches by doing that with someone who doesn't care, like let's say a Smurf who doesn't really care about their LP, to protect the LP of the person trying to climb up the ladder. So I like that. I really would love to have known what the timing of this is. What I was really interested about when it came to remakes was what point in the game are you allowed to make that decision? Because I think in League PC, the player has to be AFK for 3 minutes before the remake option comes up. How long do you have to wait in Wild Rift before the remake option comes up? Is it going to be 1 minute if the player just hasn't arrived by 1 minute? Or is it going to be 2 minutes? Like, at what point in the game is that remake option going to be coming up? Because obviously, like, some players are just a bit slow and load in, but you can still get to lane and be effective if you're AFK for like the first 45 seconds to a minute of a game. But if you're AFK for the first 3 minutes of the game, you just fall so far behind that you can't really compete in the laning phase. So I'm interested to know the time at which you'll have the opportunity to vote to remake. I would recommend, guys, if you ever offered a vote to remake, almost always, unless someone is starting to sort of get ahead, vote to remake. I'm not sure, but in PC, if first blood has happened or a kill has happened, you can't actually remake. So I'm wondering whether that's also the case. I really would love to see a bit more information on this from the patch notes, realistically. There's quite a lot of questions that I have that haven't really been answered by the patch notes here. Sorry, I've got something. I need to get a drink. There's so many patches notes. I need to have water for this. Okay. Ranked and AFK loss mitigation. Any players who leave in ranked will now be penalized more harshly on their climb. Below diamond, you'll have more ranked fortitude deducted based on how long you were AFK during the match. Diamond and above, you will have more VP deducted based on how long you were AFK during the match. Like, how much VP is the cap? Like, what's the cap on the VP for being AFK? Is it like 50 or is it like 30? Like, I'd love to know, because honestly, if you like put a really big cap on it, like 50, and someone actually genuinely went AFK through the whole of the match, then like I'd love to see those people lose like almost all of their progress for the day, because you just would be really careful about going AFK, right? So I'd love to know what the cap was on the VP for that. On the other hand, and also, what happens if you don't have any ranked fortitude left? This is a really interesting question. Do you go into the minus? Do you have to then like work your way back up as a surplus? Like, what happens if you don't have any ranked fortitude to be deducted in the first place? That'd be really interesting to know. On the other hand, the rest of the team will receive more ranked fortitude or lose less VP. Below Diamond, you'll receive 20 or 50% of the ranked fortitude needed to prevent a loss, based on how long your teammate was AFK for. This will also be added to any other ranked fortitude you would gain for the match. That's pretty cool. Diamond and above, you get back 20% or 50% of the VP you lost, depending on how long your teammate was AFK. Cool. So you could, like, for most Diamond players right now, you'd probably get like 8 LP back, so you'd lose 7 LP or something like that, which is pretty good, I think. That's a good thing. The values might change depending on how this shakes out, which is, again, pretty understandable. We're also making a few adjustments to ranked fortitude this patch to help improve your experience while climbing through the rank. Performing well in a ranked match, but still losing can be a frustrating experience, so we're adding in loss mitigation for when those games happen. You'll be given a small amount of ranked fortitude when you perform excellently in a game that you still lost. I assume they'll be doing this based on the you perform better than X percentage of the same champion players, or they'll do it based on kind of like how close you get to getting like A rank or S rank. That's the only way I guess they see them doing that. We're also making some adjustments to your end of game settlements. Sometimes you'll have so much fortitude that when you lose a game, you can have a shield built, but we deduct your first mark so the shield won't apply into your next. We'll now be calculating the fortitude that you gain first, so that your shield will protect your loss immediately rather than the next game. That's irrelevant for this here, because essentially you could get a huge boost of ranked fortitude, like 50% of ranked fortitude you need to prevent a loss, which will get you to the loss prevention threshold, and then you just don't get the loss, which is actually pretty cool. Like, loads of really good ideas being implemented here that are gonna massively help the ranked experience. I do just want to know some of the finer details, like, you know, what time is the remake, like what is the cap on how much VP or ranked fortitude these players can lose from being AFK, etc. Wild Pass, and it is Dream Raider Nasus. That's pretty cool. Is that a wildrift exclusive? Maybe. Skins: Sandstorm Echo, High Noon Ash, High Noon Aurelia, High Noon Thresh. High Noon Thresh is a great skin, by the way, one of my favorites. So very cool. I love the High Noon skin line. Blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Sorry for blah blah blahing my way through this, but we want to get to the champion changes, so let's get on with it. Okay, starting with Akali. Akali has been underperforming across the board. Yes, yeah. I mean, I largely agree. She definitely felt a little underwhelming. I mean, you still had Akali players that honestly made her feel incredibly oppressive, and that's the problem with Akali. Like, there is always going to be some Akali players that can make her work, and she becomes really annoying. We're taking away some of her energy regeneration, which was previously higher than other energy reusers. In return, we're giving her some more power, so she's less dependent on playing around her enormous energy regen. We're also looking down to cut some of the frustrating gameplay her foes face by putting more of Akali's ultimate into her first dash. This should reduce the amount of times that Akali can execute her enemies primarily with the second dash of her ultimate after hitting another target with the first. Okay, so basically they're saying that, you know, I think ultimately what was frustrating about Akali is that she would use her first dash on someone, which would just catapult her into a position where she could then just execute someone else, which was sometimes a bit annoying, because she would basically use first dash, throw down the shroud, and then wait for like the prime opportunity to just kill someone with her second dash. So energy regeneration per 5 seconds is coming down by half. So they're taking, sorry, a third. So they're taking away 25 energy regeneration per 5 seconds, which is actually pretty significant. Her 5-point strike base damage is going up by a small amount, but the energy cost is coming down. And her perfect execution first cast damage is going up by a lot. So especially at the third level, you're getting a, what, like 105 extra base damage on perfect execution. Minimum second cast damage is getting a small base damage nerf and an AP ratio nerf. Still going to have a pretty decent, like, she's still going to have a pretty decent execution. The But first damage is always just only single target first. Like first dash is pretty much always only single target. And second dashes can be a bit more sort of frustrating because you can hit multiple targets with it. So I think ultimately you're going to see a pretty sizable nerf to Akali's damage. I mean, look, this is okay, right? They're a little bit of a base damage buff, but it's 5 base damage, and really they're actually kind of massively nerfing her. So they haven't really buffed her. What they're actually doing is massively nerfing her, especially in her teamfight potential. The 10 energy cost on her 5-point strike is cool, but they're also reducing her energy regeneration by a decent amount. I mean, she's adjusted, right? They called it adjustment. Definitely don't feel like this is like a resounding buff for Akali. It feels like pretty decent nerf, to be honest with you. But we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how it plays out. Still don't think it's great. Yeah, Ahri was getting played a lot, so they're basically nerfing her base health per level, which, I mean, base health per level is always a kind of a bit of a soft nerf, because realistically, Ahri, Ahri is weak to, in general, weak to people that can stick to her, because she's not a particularly tanky champion. So, you know, if you've got a very high burst damage, or like Zed, or you can stick to her relatively well, like Ahri struggles. She's never been that much of a problem versus shorter range mages, mostly because you can kind of dance around the outsides of a fight on your longer range than a lot of other mages in the game, you know, barring the really obnoxious ones like Ziggs. But she can struggle versus like AD assassins in the mid lane. She can struggle versus people who've got good gap closing capabilities. And in general, you know, she's weak to burst damage because she's supposed to be able to navigate the outside of fights, but you can burst her down relatively quickly. This is just going to make her easier to burst. So she's just going to be weaker to the people that are already decent counters into her. Especially in sort of the I don't know, level 4 to level 5 range before she gets her ultimate. Blitzcrank hasn't been performing as well as they wanted, even with the overdrive changes. So he's getting some more mana regen per level, and they're increasing his attack speed, so that at attack speed level 15, he's going to get 1 attack per second rather than 0.9 attack per second. So it's a little bit, it's like a very small attack speed buff. And the Power Fist cooldown is actually coming down by 2 seconds at all ranks, which actually is quite impactful, because that is one of his main ways of actually influencing team fights in the later game, which is going up and punching someone and knocking them up into the air. That's probably the more impactful buff here. You know, like, Blitzcrank has a decent amount to his kit, but like, he really is about his hook and then his silence, and then how many people he can knock up throughout the duration of a team fight. 2 seconds off the cooldown, especially when it's on a 5-second cooldown, means you're going to get several rotations of that off in a team fight. And I think that's actually pretty impactful. But ultimately, Blitzcrank is always going to struggle with the same thing that he struggles with, which is basically, is the comp that you're playing into, has the comp got someone that's worth hooking? A lot of people like to play very good, beefy frontlines into Blitz. The reason he's not that viable in competitive is, in general, you know, you see a Blitzcrank, someone's going to then lock in an Alistair, you'll get a Darius, you might get an Olaf in the jungle. Like, there are things that you can play that makes it very difficult for Blitzcrank to select the right target to hook. So, you know, ultimately, Blitzcrank is always going to struggle with that. You know, he's a very specific pick. Like, you see a Sona get locked in, you're like, okay, like, Blitzcrank time, we can do something with that. This is just going to make him a little bit more viable in general in teamfights. But again, I don't think it's going to take Blitzcrank out of the niche that he's already in. You know, like, you need to hit hooks, right, to make Blitzcrank good. Galleons' Shield of Durand has been reaching full strength too quickly for how powerful and effective it is. We're increasing the charge time to access the full power of this spell, whilst also giving it some more damage in return. The taunt duration is still 0.5 seconds to 1.5 seconds. The charge duration needed for the effective range and taunt duration to meet maximum is 0.75 to 1.25 seconds. But they're increasing the damage by a decent chunk, especially when you upgrade it. But that's 1.25 seconds gives you way more time to react. Flashes will be much easier, and also you have to really find the perfect moment to actually land a full strength taunt. That's a pretty beefy nerf to Galio. But obviously, if you can actually land the shielded Durand taunt, AP Galio gets a nice buff in terms of the damage that he deals. But obviously, you have to charge it effectively. Yeah. 1.25 seconds is a lot longer than 0.75 seconds. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that like entire half a second is enough for people to register that it's being, you know, channeled and flash and get out of it. And also just because Galio slows down when he's charging it, like it's so much easier for people to just walk out of it if you're not able to charge it to its effective range quickly enough. So yeah, I need to see how that plays in effect, but it feels like that's going to be a pretty sizable nerf to Galio's catch potential and teamfight potential, unless you are really coming in with Hero's Entrance and finding the perfect place to kind of land that taunt. However, if you do land it, more damage, which is always good, but it definitely feels like it's going to be a bit of a nerf to Galio, especially AP Galio mid. Karma continues to perform well above her fellow enchanters. Yes, she does. Inner Flame base damage is coming down, and they are really going at it this time round. 30 in the late game, and Transcendent Embrace, the slow damage is going down by 35%. So, when did the slow apply with Karma with her ultimate? Sorry guys, that was a terrible noise. The slow applied when she was on it, when it channeled, right? So when you actually land it, the slow applies. Okay, so it's going to be harder to land Karma's ultimate in general. Interesting. I think touching the ultimate was a good thing. I think ultimately the reason Karma is good still in the support role is because her shield is so good. I mean, I don't really care about Karma's damage, if I'm completely honest with you. It's nice, but it's not really the thing that makes Karma good. What makes Karma good is she's got just so much in her kit. She has a massive shield and movement speed buff, and her shield is obnoxiously large. She has an ultimate that deals a huge amount of CC. She's got some actual lockdown with her chain, and then obviously the first ability, Inner Flame, was kind of neither here nor there about how good that was. Yeah, I think ultimately Karma's still going to get picked. I mean, the fact is she's just got so much as part of her kit. Like a team-wide shield that is that big is really good. And it doesn't matter if you nerf her damage. Ultimately, Karma's still going to get picked because she just offers too much for one champion, realistically. Morgana has rooted herself. However, this sinister system not only... So we're making some adjustments so we can bring her power in both of these roles a bit closer. Okay, so her Dark Binding base damage is going up in the late game. Her Tormented Shadow base damage is coming down. The damage to monsters, however, is going up to compensate, and the mana cost is also going up. So basically, they're saying, we want Morgana... Okay, so hear me out. When I play Morgana support, what am I maxing first? I'm maxing Dark Binding first, right? So I'm going to get my base damage for free here. So when I'm playing Morgana support, I'm getting my base damage for free. When I'm playing Morgana mid lane, I max Tormented Shadow, which is the wave clearing ability. That's what they're nerfing. So are they I don't get what they're trying to say from the... Are they trying to say they want her to be played more mid lane? Because ultimately, when I play her mid lane, I max Tormented Shadow, and then I max the Dark Binding. And when I'm playing her Dragon lane, or when I'm playing her support, I max Dark Binding because that's the more utility focused spell, right? Dark Binding is single target, but the root duration goes up when I play her in the support lane. Whereas when I'm playing her in mid lane, I really just want the most damage possible, so I just max Tormented Shadow because that's the one that's going to have the most wave clearing ability. This is going to be the one that has the most AoE damage in team fights. Irrespective, you know, if you catch someone in Dark Binding now, it's going to hurt a hell of a lot more. And Tormented Shadow, the base damage coming down by that much in the late game is kind of it's neither here nor there. I think Morgana's still going to be fine, and she's still going to fill her niche relatively well. I mean, she's usually always played in the support role. When you're playing her in Dragon Lane, sometimes people play her as like a Dragon Lane carry, but I just think there are better carries to have in that position. But you know, ultimately, I don't think these changes are going to suddenly shift her anywhere. I think almost she probably just gets a little bit better. Like her single target damage goes up quite a lot here, which is quite nice. It's one of the things that Morgana classically struggles with. So having some more single target damage is great, if I'm honest with you. Yeah, basically, I think people have realized that Rengar is just like, because Rengar's first ability counts as a basic attack, it's basically too good. So I think they're just nerfing base attack damage to make it so that building Divine Sunderer Rengar or Trinity Force Rengar isn't going to be ridiculously oppressive, and essentially just tries to reduce his ability to kind of like run away with the Sheen in the early game. I've always thought Rengar's a bit high risk, high reward anyway. And ultimately, like the 6 AD that he's losing here is not going to suddenly make him crap, because Rengar still can snowball really well. So yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I think he was a bit obnoxious when he got ahead, but he's one of those picks that can be countered, and high elo players generally know how to counter him. Gragas, by the way, and Gragas didn't get nerfed this patch, thank God. But yeah, I think he probably was one of those junglers that, especially in the mid to low elos, was really annoying. Especially at high elo, you probably have like a lot of really talented Rengar players that can run away with games very easily, and this is just to kind of stop his snowballing potential, I think. Seraphine is played as a carry in either the mid lane or dragon lane, and has been significantly stronger than when she's supporting, especially when played with a duet partner like Sona. We're reducing some of her ability power ratios to cut back on while she scales with items and giving her small boost to her base damage. I mean, this doesn't make Seraphine a better support. This just makes Seraphine a worse champion. Because the base damage increases are like nothing. She's got 5 base damage increase on her high note. This doesn't make her a better support. This just makes her a worse champion. To make her a better support, you really need to buff her shielding capabilities and her healing capabilities. Or maybe the duration of her ultimate CC. But this just makes Seraphine a worse champion, if I'm honest with you. So this is just strictly a nerf to Seraphine overall. And this is not going to make her better in support. 5 base damage on high note is not going to make her a better support, trust me. This has just made her a worse champion overall. She's still going to remain very low tier in terms of support. Shen's energy regeneration is currently lacking in comparison to his ninja brethren, so we're increasing it to help him get some more energy back. Energy regen is going up to 50, so he's getting a 100% increase in energy regen. Energy gained from damaging champions is going to come down a little bit, though. And then Twilight Assault, which is his first ability, is going to have an energy cost increase to compensate. So basically, letting him regenerate more energy passively, but making things cost a little bit more, and also generating less when he attacks enemy champions. This is not going to make Shen viable. I mean, Shen's like marginally viable. He's not insane. He's probably quite balanced, I would say, if not a little weak. The problem with Shen is that he can't play side lane to save his life. So the problem with Shen, in my opinion, is that, especially as the game progresses, one of the great things about Shen is that you really want him to be able to push side lanes and be a nuisance as a split pusher, and then join a team fight when he can with his ultimate. The problem with Shen is he can't do that because he just can't clear waves very quickly. We don't have Titanic Hydra in Wild Rift. The devs, when they brought Wild Rift out, added in a small splash damage for melee basic attacks that kind of acted like a mini Titanic Hydra, but it's not good enough for Shen to be able to clear waves effectively. So he just gets stuck clearing waves really slowly, and that ultimately makes him quite difficult to play in a side lane. So yeah, that's the reason that Shen isn't that viable. Otherwise, he's probably quite balanced. Sona has been getting good. Yes, I mean, a lot of people have been playing Sona recently, and I think the Sona Seraphine lane has been played quite a lot in competitive, and also probably being picked up in solo queue. She's getting a base armor nerf. Her heal, oh my god, her heal's coming down by 30, but the shield is going up. That's actually a good. This is actually a really good change. The obnoxious thing about Sona was how quickly she healed the team up. So they're basically saying, we'll take the healing off, but add it to a shield so that if you really value that HP, you are getting it, but you need to use it at the right time. And I think that's good. I mean, ultimately, Sona has got incredible scaling, and she's always supposed to have incredible scaling. And I think, realistically, even with a 30 healing nerf on her Aria of Perseverance. Sorry, I can't talk today. Things like harmonic echoes still exist, which just makes Sona really strong in general. So I think, ultimately she's still going to be doing what she does or has been able to do. but her base armor nerf is going to make her slightly more vulnerable, especially in the duo lane. And also, like this 30 base damage healing nerf is actually quite significant, and I think will cut down sort of at least her mid game frustrations, which I think is what the problem was. When you'd maxed your heal, it was quite annoying to play against Sona when they maxed the heal. So this is now going to just cut down that annoyance in the mid game when she's maxed that heal, which is going to be good. Soraka does suck, by the way. I completely agree with this. Her passive movement speed that she gets towards a injured ally is going up to 100%. So you're really going to be playing the zoomies with Soraka now. Star Cool Rejuvenation is going up to 2.5 seconds. The cooldown is coming down by 0.5 seconds at all rank. And the total healing that you get from Rejuvenation is going up quite a lot in the late game and getting a better AP ratio. That's really cool. I think that's good. And Astral Infusion Rejuvenation is also going to last for 2.5 seconds. So that's cool. I mean, Soraka really struggled with sustain. She kind of needed Warmogs to be like sustainable in the sort of the late game. Like you would just run out of health too quickly. So now you're just going to get rewarded for hitting your first ability more effectively, which is really cool. And I think is generally going to be a pretty good thing. So yeah, I like this change to Soraka. I think it's really good. It's not going to make her super viable, but it might make her a little easier to play. And also the extra healing regeneration that you get from landing your first ability is going to be much wanted. So that's really good. Okay, we're at gameplay changes now, which seems like a good time to talk about my holiday. Yeah, so we went to Greece. We went to Kos in Greece, which some of you Europeans will probably be more familiar with from some of my Asian and North American viewers. That is a small island that is between Greece and Turkey, and it's quite a nice holiday destination. It used to be kind of known as like at least the main town used to be known, especially in Britain, as a bit of a party island. But I think it's kind of lost that reputation now. It's very much become like a family resort. So yeah, Kos is really nice. We went with my family, went to a resort called Ikos, which is basically like an all-inclusive. It's really great for kids. We've been there before in a place called Halkidiki in Greece the previous year. So we went this time round to the Ikos one. Sorry, the Kos version of Ikos. Really good. Had a great time until about halfway through the holiday, Rupert got chickenpox. And for those of you who've got kids, you'll know that when your kid gets chickenpox, they generally get kind of like barred from everyday life for a bit because it's very contagious. And for pregnant women and for other kids, it's not nice if you haven't had it. So, and it's actually quite dangerous for pregnant women if you haven't had it. So yeah, it was a bit awkward. And it meant that he wasn't allowed to leave the room. And yeah, obviously you can tell with a 3-year-old, that's not a good look. It's not great for him either when he likes to go swimming and he likes to do all these fun things. What was worse was on the way back from holiday, we get to the airport and we try to board the flight. And I didn't know this, but the airline don't let you fly with chickenpox. If you've got chickenpox or someone in your family's got chickenpox, you're not allowed to fly. So basically it differs between airline to airline. But basically, in general, if the spots of chickenpox have got a scab on them, if they're scabbed over, you're not really considered infectious anymore. In fact, actually what is mostly the case is you're actually infectious, but usually more infectious before the spots have even appeared. When the spots have appeared, that's like the end of chickenpox, where the infection stage is kind of going down a little bit. You're still infectious, clearly, but it's going down. And usually people say that once the spots have scabbed or healed over, that's like an okay-ish time to sort of go back to doing normal things. So yeah, we got denied from boarding, and then we had to go and see a doctor and get a fit to fly note. He looked at the scab and said, yeah, okay, I think that looks okay. And we had to pay for a fit to fly note. Then we had to board another flight, and we actually flew from a place called Bristol in the UK. And for my UK followers, you'll know the pain of this. We then had to fly from Kos to Athens to London, Gatwick, and then we had to go from Gatwick the next day to Bristol to get my car, and then drive 4 hours from Bristol to Ipswich to get home. That was my holiday. It was very painful. I'm actually quite glad I'm home. Right, let's talk about gameplay changes. Items. Executioner's Calling. We're making some adjustments. Both items cost a decent chunk of gold, whilst also offering some desirable stats. This has put them in an odd spot where in some games they're an optimal item to rush because of the stats they provide, but in other games it can be hard to justify buying them purely for the anti-healing because they cost so much gold. We're making adjustments to both. So basically, attack damage down, gold is coming down with it as well. I'm looking at you, Kaiser, by the way. Kaiser is one of the few people I know that effectively rushes Executioner's Calling happily because it gives some extra attack damage that gets her over the threshold. And then it can be built into something later into the game. And also just having the anti-healing is a nice thing anyway. So I wonder if this is going to affect Kaiser's evolution pathway by not having the Executioner's Calling to play with. Infinity Orb, the ability power is going up. Mostly, I mean, like Infinity Orb is always a bit of a who's going Morillanomicon over Infinity Orb in general? I think I usually go Infinity Orb in champions that I want to like find an executing blow with. But I mean, tell me, do you guys go Morillanomicon or Infinity Orb usually? Just let's have a little poll in the in the comments. Do you go Morillanomicon or Infinity Orb more often? I almost always go Infinity Orb more often unless there is a reason for me to go Morillanomicon, like healing. And even then, I usually end up picking up the, what's it called? The Oblivion Orb early on. They haven't changed Oblivion Orb, though. So that's interesting. Ixtali Seed Jar. We wanted to be an item that would allow you to roam around the rift making plays. However, it hasn't been living up to that. We're shifting its stats to be focused more on health and ability haste rather than resistances and making some minor changes and adjustments to improve the overall feel of the item. Health, 425. Ability haste, 25 with a 5% movement speed. And it costs a little bit less. That's cool. This is much more like useful stats for everybody, right? This, the problem with the resistances is that it was just like it competed with what the hell is that thing called? The thing that makes you do the thing with the ultimate. My brain's just not working. That you know what I'm talking. The little shield, frost fire thing. What the called? Why can't I think about what the item's called? Hextech something. I don't know. Either way, it was competing with that item, and just that item was better. Sorry, I literally can't remember. Okay, when you went out, it drops a seed. You can pick it up and replace that new. Picking up a seed grants 40% movement speed, decaying over 2.5 seconds. Interesting. So this is kind of like. Oh, right, yeah. So they're not removing this. They're keeping that, but they're just giving you a little movement speed buff that you can have. Okay. So around like blast cones and around sort of like the what they called honey fruit and even Scryer's blooms. Like imagine you're an Alistair, you hit a Scryer's bloom and you reveal the dragon pit and you're like, oh god, time to go. You pick up the seed and you rush in and you engage the enemy team. That's really cool. I mean, this is a really cool change. This makes this item actually quite interesting because it is almost like a uniquely situational engage item that actually gives you some really viable stats, especially for tank supports, and actually doesn't conflict with some other items that are also very useful. It's also costing quite low, so it's quite good gold efficiency in terms of what you're getting here. Very cool item that I actually think could see some play now. Actually think that Ixtali Seed Jar could see some play with these changes, and I am going to be testing out for sure. That is some cool stuff to Ixtali Seed Jar. Makes it feel a little bit more viable as an item. Last Whisper got nerfed. We feel there's some room to give us some of its power back. So the combine cost is coming down and the total cost is going down to 1100 gold. So Last Whisper as an item is actually going to be more easily purchasable by itself, which is pretty cool because just having some armor pen in your kit early on versus heavy tanks is quite nice. Oh, Oblivion Orb is getting changed. Same thing. Then they're reducing the ability power and the gold as well. That's cool. I don't think anybody builds Oblivion Orb as an individual item outright. I think that you would. I only ever saw people pick up Oblivion Orb really for the need for anti-healing. So, but I don't think this changes too much about the situational position that Oblivion Orb has in people's inventories. Okay, yeah, Rhyalize was super situational, and I don't think many people played it. So it's getting an extra 10% slow. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm interested to see if people like Rhyalize, because it actually gives you quite a lot of AP, it gives you some health, and now with a slightly increased slow, that's pretty cool. So, but again, it's like it's an item that feels quite situational because it is very much control orientated and doesn't really fit in the meta of like burst items that we've got. You know, what I'm really reading from these changes is like they're trying to make other items viable, but ultimately we're in a meta of Wildrift where burst damage matters. So Ludens, Rabadons, XYZ, like that's always going to be the preferred build path for most AP carries because it gives them the biggest damage spike where possible. And right now the meta is very much about how much damage you can pump out in the shortest time possible. So ultimately these changes are pretty cool, but I don't think they do much to upset the balance of just Ludens, Rabadons as the absolute meta-defining picks right now. That's just my 2 cents anyway. Okay, so basically they're saying that they're giving you slightly more base damage on the Radiance on hit effect damage. Don't think it's going to suddenly make it any more magical, realistically. I think that, you know, Solari Chargeblade's still going to be played by very few people in the meta. I don't actually know who actually plays Solari Chargeblade now regularly. I think I know Kai'Sa does sometimes and Lucian does, but yeah, ultimately I don't think this is going to suddenly make that item good. Void Staff has been in an alright spot, but they want to make it more powerful. I think Void Staff was fine, but you know, maybe they felt that there was not enough magic penetration in the game, and an extra 5% magic penetration. But there aren't that many good magic resist items, at least not ones that are built regularly, right? All of the armor items are almost more preferable than the magic resist items, which is very interesting. But ultimately, you know, 5% pen, you know, going to make the champions that are already pretty good better in the late game, like Orianna, for instance. She's going to love this change. So, you know, I don't know how much that's going to really impact anything other than just making the champions that had this as part of their core build path already just better, realistically. Now for the fun part, we're talking about runes. God, there's a lot of runes here, isn't there? Oh my God, there's so many changes. I'm gonna have to go get my son soon from their nan's house. I'm probably gonna have to come back. I'm gonna get as much done of this as I can, and then I'm gonna finish it when my sons are in bed, because I don't know if I'm gonna have time to do this because I've got to go pick up my sons. I'll get as much done of it now as I can. It's about 5 p.m. now, so just after work. Giant Slayer is a new minor rune that shines when you're facing up against high health targets. When a wild Dr. Mundo appears, deal bonus damage based on the enemy's champion's bonus health up to 10% damage when the enemy has 1,000 bonus health. 1,000 bonus health is quite hard to achieve. Like you kind of need a Warmogs to make that a reality. Ultimately, tanks are already in a pretty bad spot in Wildrift, and I think some of the concerns that were raised on this, like sort of the talk about this, is that actually tanks kind of suck right now, and now you're just making things that make tanks suck even harder. I wonder if we'll see some tank item changes or buffs in the near future, but I guess they'll just keep an eye on it. But this is a good item, but I want to reiterate that 1,000 bonus health can be quite hard to achieve. It's going to be, you'd need like 2.5 dedicated health items to get this. I mean, Ixtali, Seejar plus Warmogs definitely gets you there, but yeah, you need like 2.5 bonus health items to really make this a reality. But 10% bonus damage versus tanks is nice, especially when you factor in things like Last Whisper. You know, you're going to be getting a pretty decent extra chunk of damage to Giant Slayer with Giant Slayer. Scorch is an early game option for caster champions that want to press their advantage in the laning phase. When you're looking to dominate your lane with spells and burn your foes, Scorch is the rune for you. Dealing an ability damage to a champion deals an additional 21 to 35 magic damage after 1 second. This rune is actually really good, like really, really insane. Especially in the domination pathway, where arguably there aren't many great AP like immediate effect AP runes. Scorch is pretty good. I would say that this is going to be pretty much a staple on most AP champions in the mid lane. But you know, ultimately it could be for caster AD champions like Scorch on Camille, like Baron lane, for instance. Is pretty good. Like, you just keep leg sweeping them and they just keep taking a huge chunk of damage. Like, this is like 21 to 35. Like 21 in the early game is a lot of damage. A lot of damage in the laning phase. It's a really, really good rune. Really, really, really good rune, especially if you're a champion that likes to harass. Like Ziggs, for instance. Ziggs gets massive value out of Scorch. This is a really, really good rune. Absolutely. Demolish. We're getting another split push rune, everybody. Yes, let's go. Our latest addition in the tower taking a split push category. It gives fighters and tanks more ways to play out the game and helps them mow down structures in their team's way. When within 550 range of a turret, charge, I think that means charge and attack over 3 seconds. Attacking the turret discharges the attack, dealing 200 plus 25% maximum health bonus adaptive damage. That is a lot of damage extra to turrets. I just want to let you know. So if you're playing like Tank Nasus and you just want to split push your way to victory, boom, this is a great item for you. And it's in the inspiration tree, which classically has pretty terrible runes apart from the honey fruit rune. And that recently got nerfed. So now you have like a genuine viable other option to include for when you're trying to play split push, which I think is great. Inspiration, by the way, really, really good rune in general. Love it. Nimbus Cloak. Gives extra ability to those critical moments after burning a large summoner spell. Casting a summoner spell grants 5% to 25% based on summoner spell cooldown bonus movement speed. So Flash, for instance, you're going to get a really nice extra amount of bonus movement speed. But also, you know, if you're flashing into a fight, like you're going to like zoom them down. It's a really good chasing rune. So really, really cool. And especially for like tank supports, like there aren't actually many awesome inspiration runes for supports because you don't really want to take the honey fruit rune and everything else feels a little bit like So this is like a really good rune for like supports in general. And I expect to see this picked up quite frequently by supports. You know, I think there is a case that honey fruit is still really good because the extra sustain that it gives you. But this is a really, really nice rune to consider as well. Especially people that have got low mobility. So low mobility champions like Vigars and the Varuses of the world, they will really like this because it, you know, means when you flash, you get a slight little boost in movement speed that can allow you to outplay and get to safety. So it's pretty cool. Jungler's worst nightmare, by the way. It's going to be the jungler's worst nightmare. Because if you flash, it now gives that little extra window that they can get away from you and you can't really follow up as easily. So it's a really, really annoying rune to have to deal with in ganks. As a keystone rune, lethal tempo. So basically we're bringing lethal tempo in to kind of help give another rune choice for people going with Conqueror. Which is interesting because maybe they bring Conquerors, or they buff Conqueror again to bring it back in line. Now there's some more viable options, but we'll have to see. When attacking enemy champions, gain a stack of attack speed. For melee champions, these grant 6 to 12% based on level attack per stack. For ranged champions, these grant 3 to 9% based on level attacks per stack. 6 stack maximum. When a maximum stacks, gain additional 30% bonus attack speed. Additional bonus attack speed buff lasts 6 seconds and the buff is refreshable. Hello, Jax Jungle. And Jax everywhere. This is a really, really insane rune for Jax. It's a really insane rune for Vayne. Anybody is an insane rune for Tristana. Like, you know, Tristana with her stacking explosive shot. Xayah, it's a really, really great rune for Xayah to stack as many feathers as quickly as possible. This is a great rune for anybody that really has any kind of on-hit or on-base attack effects. Love this rune. Very, very cool. And it's also really great for any kind of like AD champion specifically that really wants to make use of when they actually land their basic attacks in a fight. So, and it's great for Darius. Like Lethal Temple Darius can work, even though I wouldn't 100% recommend it. But you can play Lethal Temple Darius, which, you know, allows you to stack up more quickly as well. Really, really cool rune, and I think it's going to get played quite a lot. And it's really nice to have some more options for AD champions that aren't just Conqueror. Kraken Slayer. Kraken Slayer is another unique keystone that we're now bringing for auto attackers that both has interesting situational applications due to its true damage and powerful ratios, and can also be suitable for champions that already have attack speed steroids, attack resets, or on attack effects that may not want to use lethal tempo. Every third attack on a champion deals 28 to 70 plus 30 bonus AD plus 20 AP bonus true damage. Kraken Slayer does not have a cooldown. On-hit effects do not stack, but can trigger the full stack damage. Stacks last for 3 seconds. Okay, Vayne. Vayne feels like she might be insane. This also sounds insane with Jax. This keystone it feels nutty. Tristana? This keystone seems insane, by the way. Really insane. Lucian, because you get Light Slinger passive that counts for basic attacks. This rune seems insane. Am I being stupid, guys? Does this rune seem insane? I think this rune seems insane. We need to test this, but it seems insane. Resolve, Ultimate Shield. There's a new option champions to looking to go with the ultimates like Ken and Morgana when you need some extra durability. After casting your ultimate, gain a shield. That's insane. That's so good. It's great for Morgana. Great for even Alistair to an extent. It's great for Kennons. Yeah, that's really, really cool. Like that a lot. Even Katarina. That's insanely cool. That's a really, really cool rune. I'm expecting that to get seen a lot, if I'm honest with you. Does it have a cooldown? Because if it doesn't have a cooldown, that seems really broken for Katarina as well. We want to give carry champions a scaling option in the resolve tree, so we're adding Nullifying Orb. When you want to build aggressively but need some extra defenses in dangerous seconds, try out Nullifying Orb. If you take damage from a champion that causes your health to fall below 35%, gain a shield that absorbs 80 plus 50% bonus 80. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's just a base. For me, this is just a better version of Adaptive Carapace. So, I mean, if you were ever thinking about taking Adaptive Carapace, this is just a better version of it, if I'm honest with you. So, I think that Nullifying Orb is going to be better than Adaptive Carapace in most situations. We fixed the tooltip. It will now correctly stay. The delay is 3 seconds instead of 4 seconds. Cool. Mastermind has been a neutral rune that was a good option when you wanted to focus on taking turrets on neutral objectives, but with the introduction of Demolish, we're splitting these up, and Mastermind will now be focused on just neutral objectives. Bonus damage to epic monsters only. You gain 400 gold. Gold gained in taking an assist. So basically, it's just like for junglers. It's basically the jungle rune now. It doesn't really apply to any laning. Fleet footwork. When they're looking to have some extra lane sustain, we're looking to broaden that by reducing some of the lane sustain it provides and introducing a new mana or energy payout for attacking champions. Missing healing is going down in general across the board, but you will restore missing energy or mana when triggered against a champion. Okay. I feel like it just makes it worse, though. I mean, it might work for some mid lane champions who burn through their mana quite quickly, which is pretty cool. But the later the game goes, the less mana concerns become a reality for most champions. So, yeah, I'm not entirely certain how much I love that, because I just think that this is going to become a rune that almost no one uses. And there aren't many champions that I can think that have got severe mana issues, especially as the game progresses. It might be good for like early laning phase for things like Orianna, who really do burn through their mana, or maybe Twisted Fate, who burns through his mana pretty quickly. But there are not many champions that I think really use this massively. Maybe a Kali, because you get some missing mana regen back here, but you're missing energy back here. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think this is. I think this is a bad change for Fleet Footwork, and I think realistically isn't going to be used as much now. Maybe Jhin. It's still good for Jhin, right? I guess he uses mana a lot. Starting your clears by slaying red buff has been the dominating choice for most junglers because of its favourable resistances and the immense power the true damage burn provides when clearing through the rest of your camps. We're decreasing some of that power it provides as a clearing tool for junglers, but also making a few other adjustments to red buff. We wanted it to make a few mana changes to blue buff as well, make it more powerful for early clearing so it can be a more competitive camp to red buff. Crest of Sinners now deals 50% against non-champion units. You don't get any magic resistance, and the health of it is going up by 20%. Deals 50%, and the evolved one also deals 50%, and also the evolved red Rumbleback doesn't give you any magic resistance. So basically, they're making it so that if it lowers your clear speed a little bit if you're starting red. Okay, so basically, what they've done is they've made it so that Brambleback hasn't got any magic resist, and like blue doesn't have any armor, but they've slightly increased the health. I don't know what is 30 armor. 1 second, guys, I'm going to Google this. 1 second. Okay, this is how it works, right? So 30 is somewhere. I mean, 30 armor gives, and magic resist gives you 20% reduction in damage. Okay, I think there or thereabouts. It might be a little higher than that. That looks like almost 25, but I'm not going to work out the actual stats. But if you look, bloody hell, sorry guys, what have I just done here? You look here, It's probably where about 30 is, and it brings you somewhere between 20 and 22%. So maybe you're going to get like a 2 or 3% more damage off because they've boosted the health of these they've boosted the health of them. So, you know, no armor and no magic resist means you're going to be doing more damage, but they're increasing the health, so it kind of nets out even in terms of the actual damage that you're dealing here. Can you see? Like, I'm pointing over here on this bit. It nets out kind of even. So, they're not going to be significantly easier to take. I don't know what the... so basically, I think that the reason that they've reduced the armor on Blue Sentinel is they'd like it to be a more viable choice for AD junglers to start. And they've reduced the Bramble back to 0 magic resist. I don't know if these things had armor and magic resist independently. I don't know. I can't tell you. Maybe you guys can tell me. But essentially, I think they're trying to make blue better to take for AD champions and red easier to take for AP champions. But my ultimate takeaway from these changes is they are just flat out making the jungle slightly worse. I don't think they've made blue buff any better. I mean, they've removed the health regeneration, which I think was the most important thing about blue buff, and then they've just given it useless ability haste, especially in the early game. And they've removed the empowered one and just given you some ultimate ability haste as well as normal ability haste. So kind of okay later into the game. You know, Evelyn's are going to love that, for instance, like a bit of extra ability haste. But ultimately, they've just made the jungle worse overall. And I still think you're going to start red buff. I still think you start. For me, there isn't any kind of like overarching reason why you start blue buff based on this, because they've only made it so that you're getting extra max energy. They haven't really even changed the mana regeneration, so it's just energy regeneration. So for me, personally, feels like you're still going to start red buff. And realistically, like, you want to go from a buff to a very easy camp to take, and just timing wise, it's better to go red into Razorbeaks, which is really easy, a good second camp to take. You don't really want to go blue into Gromp, because Gromp's quite hard to take for a lot of junglers, and Wolves are a little harder to take than the Razorbeaks, for instance. So in terms of just efficiency and pathing, red into Razorbeaks is always going to be better, you know, for the most part. So I don't see this making blue a better pathway for a lot of champions. The only benefit of potentially going from blue into red is that you would have red for a little bit longer, obviously, and that has more impact in ganks. So that's the only benefit from going from blue to red, but that was always a benefit before. The only benefit that kind of stands now is if it's easier to take blue buff than it is to take red. So that would be my caveat when it came to this. But I'm not overly convinced that these jungle changes are that good, if I'm honest with you. Okay, I'm going to quickly run through the end of this. Blah, 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 blah. We've had the first objective spawn a little later. We've enjoyed these changes, so we're going to go ahead and put that into the core game. Additionally, we're making Rift Herald less rewarding immediately, so that more Rift Herald powers comes from using it rather than just getting a big gold spike. So they're all spawning at 5 minutes now. It gives you more laning phase. Everybody gets a bit more laning phase, which is great for the Baron lane, I think. So having a bit more laning phase to work with is awesome. I really didn't like that 4 minutes into the game, you basically had to exit the laning phase and go, right, now we just fiesta around objectives. It's only 1 minute, but that 1 minute will feel like a really good time for you to try and find windows around using your ultimates in lane potentially, and just like getting ahead from your own accord, or even more time for the jungle to actually do something rather than just having to then hover around an objective at 4 minutes into the game. So really like those changes. I think they're very cool. Smite. We made some adjustments that try and help caster junglers out, but they're still struggling. So we're making small adjustments to Smite to buff, and another small adjustment to Smite to buff and upskill damage in the jungle. Is that basically meaning that you do extra ability damage to monsters? So you're getting an extra 5% ability damage to monsters? I think that's what it means. Great. Evelyn is, again, another great pick for this patch. I also like Evelyn because she clears Krugs first most of the time, so these red buff changes won't really be that much of a difficult. We're releasing Control Wards as a third trinket option to let players have more options versus camouflage champions like Evelyn or Teemo. This is really good and really annoying for Evelyn players, actually. Now, I just thought that Evelyn was going to be good, but yeah, Control Wards make it difficult. There can only be on one Control Ward on the map per player, and they are harder to defend due to them not being stealthed. So if you don't know what a Control Ward is, it's basically a ward that you can see, and you don't need anything to see that. It has, I think, 3 hit points in wildrift, and it reveals other wards, but it also reveals stealth champions like Teemo and Teemo Shrooms, but also, very importantly, Evelyn. If you see an Evelyn in your game, someone or at least multiple people should be starting with a control ward. And I would actually recommend that most people start with control wards anyway, because it's a great way to provide consistent lane presence, or lane, sort of consistent vision control around your lane. And it also means that if the jungler clears it, it's very obvious when the jungler clears it, rather than having to be caught out by a sweeper potentially. Tenacity is to be multiplicative instead of additive to reduce the effectiveness of stacking tenacity. Tenacity is now multiplicative instead of additive. For example, if a champion has 2 sources of 30% tenacity, the crowd control duration will be 49% instead of 40%. The champion has 2 sources of 30% tenacity. The crowd control duration will now be 49% instead of 40%. Oh, okay, so it'll last 49% of its time rather than the 40% of its time. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, it just means that tenacity is getting worse, but also means all crowd control abilities are just becoming a little bit more effective. So there you go. Adjustments to this, push notifications, if I death dance in the attack defense. I love that change, by the way, because these things were annoying to find. They're actually AD items, and they were really annoying to have to go into the defense section to find them. That is it. That is a very long patch. It is nearly an hour. I'm going to end it before the hour. It is 59:59, signing off.